Hi, I'm Molly.
And I'm Jamie, and this is our From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast. As the owners of Hired Hand website software, we've been developing websites and creating internet marketing strategies for livestock breeders for the past 10 years.
The majority of our customers are involved in the breeding of registered animals, such as Texas Longhorns, Highland cattle, horses, and white-tailed deer, where the pedigrees are very important. The From the Pasture with Hired Hand podcast examines many of the differences in raising pedigreed livestock for maximum profit. Join us and learn what we're covering today.
On today's podcast, I'm talking with Dan Grove from Bailey, North Carolina, with Grove Cattle Company. Thanks for joining me, Dan.
Oh, happy to be here.
So if someone visits your website, they're going to see a lot of helpful information. You have equine, you have art for sale, you have border collies, and longhorn beef. So that's a lot of items that folks can find on your website. The topic that we're going to be focusing on today is the longhorns specifically, and also just your success with making a high quantity of private treaty sales each year, especially for someone located outside of kind of that Texas region. Before we jump into talking about the longhorns, is there anything that you want to share with our listeners about any of the other kind of sections of your website?
With the other sections of the website, actually, they all kind of spur from the longhorns. My wife does the art. She draws pictures of livestock, of pets, things of that nature, and so it kind of all ties in. The horses, the wife also does riding lessons, and the border collies they're used on our cattle. So everything kind of ties back to the longhorns.
Well, let's jump right into the longhorns then, since that's the foundation for all of it.
Sure.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about you and Christy and just kind of how you got started?
Sure. So I met my wife back in the late 90s. She had a handful of longhorn cows that she had come up with in the Longhorn youth programs. She had gone off to college, and they weren't as big a part of her life at the time. I'd come up as a team roper and was looking to raise my own roping stock. So I was going to use her cows to raise me some roping stock. And as we bred those cows and moved forward with it, I got more and more interested in the breeding aspect of it and the registered side of things. So that's kind of what it snowballed into.
So just, with your decision to raise longhorns, then it really stemmed from Christy having experience in the roping stock?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
When do you feel like you and Christy kind of officially started the herd that is today, considered Grove Cattle Company? What year would that have been?
That was about 1999. We kind of started pushing the cattle about then. When we got married in 2003, we really took off then, where we started going to a lot of the events. Started buying cattle. We we were raising roping stock, so it wasn't a big deal. But we had 3 years in a row where combined we had one heifer out of those 3 years. So we didn't have any. There were no heifers. There was no fresh female stock. So that's what got us going to some of these sales and making our first purchases. People would come along and maybe buy a couple of roping steers, and that's a pretty heifer. We'd like to have her too. So I'd sell them the heifer, and then I'd have to go buy more heifers.
Do you remember the first sale that you purchased, kind of your, what would start out to be the foundation part of your program, from today's look in? Do you remember that sale?
It was a cherry blossom sale up in Culpeper, Virginia. I went up there just to kind of go look around, and I ended up, I met Ben Gravitt up there. I met Jim Atwell up there, and Ben kind of pushed me to buy a couple, and Jim Atwell hauled them for me. So I wasn't prepared for anything And I ended up, I think it was four cows that day. And that's what kind of got me started in the buying of the Longhorns.
So those are some big names to come across at your very first sale. Tell me a little bit about just, meeting Ben and meeting Jim and him hauling, and, maybe some other people that you met as well.
Well, it was funny because when you go to these sales and all, everybody's so friendly and easy to talk to. I just bumped into Ben. I didn't know who he was or anything at the time, and just carrying on with him. And I said he encouraged me to buy a couple cows, and he set me up with Jim. Jim actually lived about an hour and a half from me, so he was coming this direction anyway. And I found that kind of throughout the years, everybody's pretty easy to talk to. You've already got something pretty big in common if you guys are all at the same sale. You may be looking at different cattle, but you still have the same interests.
For sure. So besides that first sale, were you also kind of out there trying to purchase animals directly from people? And if so, how did you find those people, and who were some of those first folks that you also bought from?
Yeah, so I was always once I kind of got into that, it became a big pastime for me. There was an app. I don't know if you guys even still maintain the app, the Breeder Beacon. That was a big thing for me. I'd use that every time I was out of town for work or whatever. I'd look and I'd go visit, somebody locally. I was on the NETMA board, so I was up in the Northeast. I'd go up there 2 days early before meetings and just visit farms. Go out to Kansas. I went out there for dog things, and while I was out there, I'd look to see who was out there and go visit farms out there, Texas, Indiana, Illinois, everywhere, Florida. I just did a lot of traveling, and every time I was somewhere, I'd try to find a farm to go look at.
So when you went to these farms, were you strictly just like looking and asking questions and trying to educate yourself more, or were you making some purchases? Like, did you have a trailer with you on the road and that sort of stuff?
I didn't take a trailer with me most of the time. However, that didn't stop me from buying. I'd go to these farms just to try to learn, try to see what they were doing, see what kind of animals they had, see what was working for their programs. And while I was there, I'd usually see something that sparked my interest, and I'd pick up one or two animals, and then I'd arrange for somebody to pick them up, or arrange to meet them at one of the events. Because it's funny, we all live so far apart, but there's usually a trailer going, at least to an event, a common event, where we could pick things up.
Do you think that that's unique for the Longhorn industry to, have folks take the time to show someone that's quote unquote new around their pasture and ask questions that didn't even come with a trailer? Do you think you'd find that in other breeds, or is that kind of, going back to how you mentioned the people that make it special? You think it kind of goes back to that?
I think it does go back to that. I think it's a lot of the people, obviously there's a lot of passion in the breed. Everybody likes to show off their own stock. So, people are always interested. People are always willing to have you come out to their place and look around. I can't think of anybody who's ever told me, no, you can't come to my place. If I kind of popped on them last minute, like, hey, I'm in town, can I stop by? I think everybody has always made time. Hey, I can't see you right now, but I get back to the house, this afternoon, come by then. And people are always willing to show off what they're doing.
Well, now that you have had Longhorns for, what a lot of folks would consider a really long time, back since 99 and, your wife even before then. But now that you kind of have that pedigree focus versus the rope and stock focus, what's your favorite part?
The people's really my favorite part. You build relationships with these people. Obviously, I enjoy the cattle, but I think the people is what kind of keeps me into it. The relationships you build, and you don't get to see these people every day, but when you do see them, it's just like you saw them last week.
For sure, I can't disagree with that. Well, let's kind of talk about what the topic of today's podcast was going to be, which is just your ability to really be successful at making private treaty sales, and a good number of sales, being on the East Coast, which I think some folks that are in your part of the country, that's something they struggle with a little bit. So I think they're all hoping you have some good advice to share here. Let's start with this question. What do you think is the hardest part about being a registered Texas Longhorn breeder outside of the state of Texas?
The travel is the hardest part. There's not much that's very close to us. The closest event to me is probably the Cherry Blossom or the Fall Classic. They're both held up in Culpeper, Virginia. So it's 4.5 hours from me. That's the closest event. So the travel is definitely what's going to hinder people. And to be successful, you have to travel. You have to be willing to go someplace. I travel. Gosh, I think this is my first weekend off in the last 8 weeks.
Yeah, I know when we were trying to find a date for the podcast, we'd go back and forth, and you'd be like, "Oh, I'm here," or "I'm here."
Yeah,
you're constantly on the road, I know.
And I'll be in Texas one weekend, and then I come home, and I'm home long enough to do laundry and go to my quote real job, and then take off again and head to Kentucky or wherever it may be. The hardest part is having to travel so much.
If you were to go to a sale in Fort Worth, say, how many hours one way would that be for you?
Typically, it's about 20 hours. What I generally do is I put in my time at work, and Thursday night when I get done work, I'll get in the truck, take Friday off or try to get all my hours in beforehand and leave Thursday night, drive out there. I'll be there for the sale, and people always laugh at me for being the first one lined up after the sale. But then as soon as the last cow sold, I'm jumping in the truck and I'm flying back here to North Carolina as fast as I can, so I can be back to work Monday morning.
Have you ever gone to any of the events like out towards the West Coast?
I have not. There's not enough time to get there and back.
Yeah. What's the furthest that you've gone in that direction, either for a sale or just to, haul or pick up an animal?
I just got back from North Dakota a couple weeks ago. So that was 25 hours, I think it was.
Wow.
Straight run. But North Dakota, kind of Kansas, been to Wyoming. Those are probably the farthest from home that I made on a weekend run.
Wow, that's impressive. One thing I've heard you say before is that your truck and trailer have built your program as much as AI or a good bull, which I got a chuckle out of. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. It's that truck and trailer, it allows me to be places. It allows me to be in front of people, allows me to get to these events and build the relationships. Like I said, it's as much as building relationships as anything. I mean, it's true that being at these events and being in front of people, being with people, that helps build your program as much as having good stock.
Well, regarding making private treaty sales, what secrets are you willing to share with us that are helping you be so successful in that regard?
Sure. With private treaty sales, you just have to do what it takes. You have to be creative. If you want to sell, cattle by the weight, commercial style, you're not going to be successful with the Longhorns. I deliver cattle. I finance cattle. I do trades. I had a lady call me one time. She wanted to buy a young heifer and a mini donkey, and she wouldn't buy the heifer without the donkey. Well, I don't have donkeys. But when I delivered her heifer, there was a donkey in the trailer. I got a buddy who raises donkeys. So I went that night before and I bought a donkey and I put it in the trailer and I delivered her exactly what she wanted. Just got to do what it takes to make the deal work.
Some good customer service there.
I really wanted to sell that heifer. Be open to trades. I got my first aluminum trailer. I traded an older pipe trailer that I had. I filled it full of mama cows, and I took it to the man's place. I unhooked my old trailer, and I hooked up to the new aluminum trailer, new to me aluminum trailer. And that's how I got my first aluminum trailer. I couldn't afford it, so I traded for it. And I've helped people that way too. I've had people trade me generators and steel buildings and all kinds of things for cattle. But it all works out. Just kind of, like I said, do what it takes to get the deal done.
I think a lot of folks, when it comes to private treaty sales, don't realize the amount of time it can take from start to finish, from that initial inquiry to kind of closing the deal, or in your case, possibly even, after with delivery and that sort of stuff. What would be some advice that you have just regarding, the investment of that time and the return on that investment?
Well, you have to put in the time. I had an old fellow I delivered some cows to for another breeder, and he was just telling me how proud he was of his new cows, and I agreed with him. He had some real nice stuff. He said that, man, I think he said he spent like $3,500 on one of those cows, and he was real proud of that fact. I said, well, yeah. He said, I bet you don't have any that are worth that. I said, well, I've got one there I've got one at my house. She's a $8,500 cow. I said, y'all jump on my website and take a look. Maybe I'll end up bringing her to you. And he laughed. He said, I don't get on the internet. I'm not worried about getting on the internet. But I've never seen an $8,500 cow. So when I got home that day, I printed off pictures of the cow, printed off pictures of her pedigree, offspring, and I printed all that stuff, put it in an envelope and mailed it to him just so that he would have the opportunity to see my cow. And I ended up selling that cow to him that way, and then delivering that cow to him. You got to put in the time. You got to put in the effort. You got to think a little unconventionally sometimes. I'd never really expected it to go as far as it did there, but sometimes unconventional works out for you. For
sure. And that's just that's a great example too of, you got your money back for your time on that one, right?
Absolutely.
Love what you're hearing? Be sure to check out our Pickup Truck Confessions. It's a video series where we hop in the truck or rental car and interview a variety of breeders about what drives their passion for their livestock, how they got started in the breed of their choice, marketing tips, and more. And now, back to the podcast.
Well, I know in other conversations I've had with you, just about marketing and private treaty sales, I feel like you strongly believe that you shouldn't really push animals on people or market what folks don't like. You would rather see your animal with someone who just really likes it, and that way you can both be profitable. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So if I know that, say you like triple twist cows, big brindle cows, there's no need for me to show you a bunch of pictures and push you toward a cow I have that, maybe she's just red roan with high horn. If that's not your thing, there's no need for me to waste your time and my efforts in trying to push something like that towards you. So if I know you and I know you what you like, then I can show you cattle that I have that match what you like. And if I can show you things like that, then it's going to bring you to come look at my cattle more and more. Everything I show you is something that you're interested in. It drives you to check out my website or check out my cattle before making a purchase somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. So if I'm a first time customer to you, say I buy, a couple heifers that I find on your website or on Facebook, how do you continue to keep me engaged over the years and hope that I become a repeat customer?
Well, if I sell you some cattle, obviously we build a relationship that way, and hopefully you'll call me for additional things. But I'll have your information, and I'll invite you to the sales that we have. I really think that whenever there's a sale in the area, whether, like I said, from here it's going to be generally Culpeper or even down to Georgia, I'm going to send you that information. I'm going to try to get you a catalog, and if I can get you engaged and get you involved in the breed, you don't have to buy cattle from me. You just have. I want you involved. I want you to be a part of this, and the whole breed benefits by having somebody new involved, new ideas, new blood, if you will. I don't see a big benefit in saying that trying to make you only buy from me. I think I get you involved and then get you involved with everybody else. I think everybody benefits that way.
So going back to your previous example of, if you know that I like, big-bodied brindle animals and I've purchased from you before, do you kind of go out of your comfort zone a little bit when you have, some brindle animals born and send them my way to see if I'd like them? Or do you strictly believe in just waiting and letting the customer come back to you and get involved with sales and stuff?
I'll send them to you, and, I've got a business to run too. But I'll send them to you. But if I know somebody up the road from me has a couple for sale too, and they're trying to sell them, I'll put you on those too. I want everybody to be successful. So if I can help you find what you like, and I can help, the guy down the road help to sell his cattle, then, like I said, I think everybody wins that way.
What about I've heard folks call it selling the dream before. What's your take on, heifers versus cows? In terms of private.
Yeah, there's more money to be made selling heifers than cows. You have a grown cow, and I'm sure we've all seen it at the sales. You have a heifer calf come in, and her mama comes in directly behind her. The heifer will bring more money than the cow. They're expecting the heifer to grow up to be nicer than mama. So if she was bred up, if the breeding worked, then that should hold true. But people like to buy that dream. They like to dream about what that heifer is going to grow into.
As it relates to your website or maybe social media posts, how important is it to put that backstory of that heifer out there? I don't think everyone understands when they see a heifer, that maybe her half sister or her granddam or, whoever it might be in relation to her did well at a sale or, is an extraordinary foundation animal for a great program. So how important is it for folks to, make sure that at first glance, if someone doesn't get that, they can read about that on that heifer?
That's very important. It's part of marketing. If you can demonstrate to people how that family has been a cash cow family, if that family generates revenue for others, then obviously it should generate revenue for you.
Well, you brought up marketing and advertising, and we've touched on websites a little bit. Just fill our listeners in on, all of your advice regarding marketing, advertising, websites, social media. Let's hear all your tips and tricks.
All right. Go into sales. If you've got an animal consigned with sale, obviously push her on some of the social media sites. Let people know that she's going to be in the sale. Before you take her to the sale, 2 weeks before the sale, give her a haircut, clip her up real nice. 2 weeks early, that gives mistakes time to grow back. I always do that. It makes them look nice. I always tell people if you get a haircut and you get prettied up before you go to town, do the same for your cattle. When you take them to the sale, don't PO. There's no need to PO them because what they bring at the sale is what they're worth. The sale does a good job of advertising. That's what they're worth that day. If you don't want to do the sales and you want to market to the individuals, you want to do the private sales, that's great. Price everything. Nothing's worse than when somebody says, hey, look at this. And you look at this animal and you say, oh, that's beautiful. I'd love to own her. How much is she? Well, she's not for sale. Well, that just drives people away because they don't want to look at something that they can't own. So always price everything. Always make things available to people. And then people will come back to you. They'll know that you're serious about selling and they'll come back to you.
How important do you think it is to have updated pictures out there of animals that you're trying to move?
Ooh, I feel like you're setting me up because I don't update my website real much.
I wasn't trying, but I mean, if you want me to scold you about it, I can.
It's very important. Honestly, it is, and I do a better job of posting updated pictures on social media than I do of updating my website. But it is very important. If you show people updated pictures, they understand what you're advertising. I usually try, if I am going to market an animal, I usually try to put a couple pictures up just so you can see a couple different views of it or a little video or something of that nature. So you can see what it is. What is it right now? It doesn't do any good to have a weanling calf picture of a 2-year-old cow. People can't see what they've grown into, and they can't see what they're buying at that point.
What about your advice for kind of closing the deal? So, if you have someone on the cusp, they haven't made the decision yet, are there any tips or tricks you can offer to, help folks close the deal on those private treaty animals?
Well, usually for me, it's usually hauling. I hate to keep going back to that, but like I say, I'm well out of the way for most people. So if I offer hauling or I offer to bring the animal to a sale or a relay point, then that usually helps get the deal done.
So let's talk a little bit about how you got to where you are today from where you started in terms of the quantity and the quality of the cattle you're moving annually.
Sure. As I said, I started selling bull calves. That's what I had at the time, and that's what we kept having. And as I'd bring in those heifers that I would buy, when people would come to buy bull calves, they'd pick up a heifer or two, and then I'd go out and buy more heifers, and and still raising cattle here. So we'd have bull calves and heifer calves. And as I was roping, I was selling to ropers, and then as I got into the breeding, the registered side of things, then people would come to me for registered stock. And I'd run out of stuff to sell, so I'd go buy more, and it just kind of kept snowballing. I sold, I don't know how many hundreds of head on Craigslist, Facebook, and now in a typical year, I sell 50 to 75 head of cows. I usually keep between 20 and 50 in the pasture, and it's a constant revolving door here. Cows come in and cows go out.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned over the years?
I learned not to get emotionally attached to every animal. You can have a favorite cow or even a couple favorite cows, but ultimately these cows they're employees in a business, and different animals, they excel in different positions, and if they're not generating a profit, you transfer them to a different position, or you fire them, replace them with an animal that will. It is a business, and it needs to be run as such. If you run it by emotion, you you won't reach your full potential.
Yeah, I can't think of the names off the top of my head, but kind of taking two of your pieces of advice to put together, in terms of the emotional connection, but also pricing your animals. I feel like, there's a lot of folks out there who won't price something they're emotionally attached to, but when they're encouraged to put a price on it, it's a pretty high price, right? Because that's their favorite pasture animal. And then when that animal sells for what they priced it at, they can't believe it.
Right.
So I feel like, just picking and choosing from your little bits of advice here, it's bringing lots of stories to mind. I feel like we could swap.
Yeah, yeah. But and it's great. Everybody's got an animal that has some kind of a special attachment to them, or either where they got it, or what that animal's produced for them, or or whatever. And that she'll probably die here on the farm. That's great, but you can't have too many of those and still be profitable. The numbers just don't work. So if you, like I said, treat them like employees, and if they're not doing well in one section of your business, you move them to another section of the business.
In addition to that, how important do you think it is for newer breeders who are trying to really get their private treaty sales off the ground to have multiple revenue streams going to kind of support those efforts?
You have to have multiple revenue streams to be successful with the Longhorns. You cannot just sell breeding stock cattle. You have to have other revenue streams. You sell live cattle sales, breeding stock. You can sell them as pasture ornaments. You can sell them as ropers. If you're going to do beef, you can lease them to ropers, bring them back, and then beef them out. There's so many different revenue streams, and if you don't dabble in each one just a little bit, then you're pinholed, and you just can't be successful. Not every cow is going to be a high-end breeding stock cow. That we'd all love to have nothing but that, but that doesn't hold true. You can't have that. So there's going to be cattle that just don't make it, and you have to have an outlet for them. If you're not dabbling in these other markets, then you're going to have a hard time. I've got other revenue streams that are tied to the cattle, like what we were talking about when we first started. My wife draws pictures of them. I sell chutes, stock dogs. I work at auctions. I help neighbors with branding, castrating, shots, haul cattle, catch cattle. I do a lot of other things that are tied to these animals, and that's what helps make it all work.
What's some advice that you wish you had gotten before you got started on this journey to, finding private treaty sales and all these other revenue streams, how important they are?
Get a good handling system. When I first started, I was a lot younger, and I could do a lot more with just a rope, and I don't want to anymore. So being able to catch the cows and work the cows and do everything that needs to be done, it went from a fun time of wrestling stock to dreading it. Having a good working system, a good chute to run them through, good gates, good fences, things like that, it makes a world of difference. I wish when I started I would have had a good setup, a good infrastructure. That would have made things a lot easier.
Well, let's end on an exciting note here. Tell me at least, one or two things that you're looking forward to with your own herd coming up in the next year or two that you're really excited about.
I'm pretty excited here in the next couple of years. I've got some embryo heifers that are placed. I say heifers, it was heifer sex semen. So I've got some embryos that are placed. Should be due this summer, early fall. Should be some good futurity heifers. I'm pretty excited about them. So hopefully I'll have a handful of my own futurity heifers to take on the futurities here in 2025.
Are you able to tell us about the embryos, like what pedigrees you chose and everything?
Not right now.
You're keeping that a secret. I see.
We'll
I
keep
see.
it a secret. Yeah. Like I said, I usually sell everything. These I'm pretty excited about. I'd like to get them to the first maturity before I have too much interest in them.
All right. Well, we'll all have to sit on pins and needles till the 2025 futurities, and then do some stalking and figure out who they are, huh?
There you go.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I think our listeners will be excited about the advice you gave and what they learned about maybe moving a few more cattle this year.
Well, sure, and I'm happy to help. And everybody's welcome to call me or talk to me at pretty much any time.
As your phone's ringing off the hook right now, right? Well, thanks again, Dan. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.